When a billionaire bursts into your bathroom while you're half naked, you expect an apology. What you don't expect is for him to ignore you completely and dive straight for the flooded pipes beneath your sink. Emily Carter's Tuesday morning went from ordinary to catastrophic in seconds, and the man responsible for fixing it might just be the one to break down every wall she's spent years building. This is a story about water damage, unlikely collisions, and what happens when two people from completely different worlds realize they're exactly what the other needs. Stay until the end, hit that like button, and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The apartment building on Maple Street had seen better decades. 3 stories of red brick and peeling white trim, it sat wedged between a laundromat that never seemed to close and a corner store with bars on the windows. The kind of place where rent came due on the 1st, but nobody complained if you were late until the 10th. Where the elevator worked maybe 60% of the time, and the super only showed up when something was actively on fire. Emily Carter had lived there for 2 years. Apartment 2C, second floor corner unit with windows that looked out onto the street and let in decent light if you didn't mind the view of cracked pavement and overflowing dumpsters. It wasn't much, but it was hers. Mostly. The bank still had their name on some paperwork from a loan she'd taken out 3 years ago, back when she still believed things could get better if she just worked hard enough. She'd learned since then that hard work was necessary but not sufficient, that the world didn't care how many extra shifts you picked up, or how carefully you budgeted, that sometimes you did everything right and still ended up eating ramen for dinner 4 nights a week. Tuesday morning started normal enough. Emily's alarm went off at 6:30, same as always. She hit snooze once, her only indulgence, then dragged herself out of bed and into the shower. The water pressure was terrible, as usual, sputtering out in irregular bursts that made shampooing her hair an exercise in patience. But it was hot, and that counted for something. She had a shift at the diner starting at 8. The breakfast rush would already be building by the time she got there, the kitchen shouting orders while customers complained about coffee that wasn't strong enough, or eggs that were too runny. She'd smile, pour refills, clear plates, and try not to think about the fact that her degree in graphic design was gathering dust in a drawer somewhere, while she carried bacon and pancakes to strangers who rarely tipped more than 10%. Emily dried off, wrapped herself in her towel, the good one, relatively speaking, the blue one that was only fraying along one edge, and stepped out of the bathroom into the tiny hallway that connected to her bedroom. That's when she heard it. A sound like rain. Heavy rain. The kind that pounds against windows during a storm. Except it wasn't raining. Emily froze, water still dripping from her hair onto her shoulders. The sound was coming from inside the apartment. From the bathroom she'd just left. She turned back, pushed the door open, and felt her stomach drop straight through the floor. Water. Everywhere. Pouring out from beneath the sink in a steady, forceful stream, flooding across the tile, already creeping out into the hallway. The cabinet doors hung open, swollen from moisture, and inside she could see the pipe, or what was left of it, spraying water with the enthusiasm of a broken fire hydrant. No, 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 no! Emily lunged forward, still clutching her towel with one hand, and dropped to her knees in front of the sink. Water soaked through the towel immediately, cold and shocking. She reached under the sink, trying to find the shutoff valve, but her hands were shaking and everything was slippery, and she couldn't see clearly because water was spraying directly into her face. Come on, come on! She twisted something. The spray got worse. Wrong valve. Behind her, she heard water starting to drip through the floorboards. Mrs. Chen lived directly below her. Mrs. Chen, who was 78 and had rheumatoid arthritis and definitely didn't deserve to have her ceiling cave in because Emily's ancient plumbing had finally given up. Emily wanted to scream or cry. Possibly both. Instead, she stood up, water sloshing around her ankles, and ran for her phone. She'd call the super. He wouldn't answer. He never answered. But she'd leave a message that was frantic enough to possibly convince him this was an actual emergency. She was halfway to the bedroom when she heard the pounding on her door. 3 heavy knocks, urgent and demanding. Emily spun around, gripping her towel tighter. "Just a second. It's an emergency," a male voice called through the door. "Your water's coming through my ceiling." Oh God. Not just Mrs. Chen then. The guy above her too. Apartment 3C. She'd never actually met him, had only seen him once or twice in passing. Tall, always in expensive-looking clothes, always on his phone. She was pretty sure he didn't even live there full-time. The apartment was probably just an investment property or something, and now she was flooding it. I know. I'm sorry. I'm trying to. I need to shut off your main valve, the voice continued, not waiting for her to finish. Do I have your permission to come in? Emily looked down at herself. Soaking wet towel, bare shoulders, hair dripping, bathroom flooding. No time to get dressed. Yes, okay, just. She didn't get to finish the sentence. The door opened. Not violently, not like he'd kicked it in. But it opened, and Emily realized with a sinking feeling that it hadn't been fully latched. She'd been in such a rush to get out of the shower that she must not have closed it properly when she came home last night. The man who stepped through was not what she expected. First, he was younger than she'd thought. Early 30s, maybe. Dark hair, slightly messy like he'd been running his hands through it. Sharp jawline, the kind that showed up in cologne ads. Wearing jeans and a white button-down with the sleeves rolled up, already speckled with water stains. Second, he didn't look at her. Emily stood there, frozen, gripping her towel, ready to shout or throw something or demand he leave immediately. And he walked straight past her, didn't even glance in her direction. He went directly to the bathroom, dropped to his knees in the spreading water, and shoved his head and shoulders under the sink. "Where's your main shutoff?" he called out, his voice slightly muffled. Emily blinked. Her brain was struggling to catch up. What? Main water shutoff. Usually under the sink or near the water heater. Where is it? She should tell him to leave. She should be mortified. She should be screaming at him for barging into her apartment while she was practically naked. Instead, she heard herself say, "I don't know." There was a pause. Then, "You don't know where your main water valve is?" "I've never needed to know before." Fair point, apparently, because he didn't argue. Instead, he backed out from under the sink, stood up, still not looking at her, and scanned the apartment with the quick, assessing gaze of someone used to solving problems. "Water heater's probably in a closet. You have a utility closet?" "By the front door," Emily managed. He moved past her again, careful to keep his eyes forward, and headed for the narrow closet she mostly used for storing cleaning supplies she rarely touched. He pulled it open, shoved aside a mop and a bucket, and found the water heater crammed into the back corner. "Got it." He crouched down, reached behind the tank, and Emily heard a metallic squeak as he turned something. The sound of rushing water from the bathroom stuttered, then stopped. Silence. Blessed, wonderful silence, except for the steady drip, drip, drip of water falling from somewhere overhead and the quiet sound of Emily's own breathing, too fast and too shallow. The man stood up, brushed his hands on his jeans, and finally turned to look at her. His eyes were dark. Brown, maybe, though the lighting in the hallway wasn't great, and he was looking directly at her face. Only her face. His gaze didn't drop, didn't wander. He kept his focus locked above her shoulders like he'd trained himself to do it. "You're going to need a plumber," he said. "That pipe's completely shot." Emily was still trying to process the fact that a stranger had just walked into her apartment and fixed her disaster in under 2 minutes. Yeah, I figured. You know a good one?" "No." He nodded, like that was the answer he'd expected. "I can call someone. I've got a guy who does work for my properties. He's fast and he won't rip you off." "Your properties?" Emily repeated slowly. Because of course. Of course he owned multiple properties. Of course he had a guy. Of course he was standing in her flooded apartment in designer jeans that probably cost more than her monthly rent, offering to solve her problems like it was nothing. "I own the building," he said. Then, registering her expression, "Well, I own several buildings. This is one of them." Emily felt something cold settle in her chest. Not the water, something else. "You're the landlord." "Technically, yes." "You're the one who never fixes anything." A flicker of something crossed his face. Not quite guilt. Maybe acknowledgement. "I have a property manager who's supposed to handle repairs. I'll be talking to him about why you had to deal with a broken pipe on your own." It should have felt like a victory. It didn't. It felt like being patronized by someone who had no idea what it was like to live somewhere where broken things stayed broken because nobody cared enough to fix them. Emily tightened her grip on her towel. "Great. Thanks. You can go now." He didn't move. "Your floor's soaked. You're going to need to dry it out properly or you'll get mold. I'll handle it." And Mrs. Chen downstairs? I'll apologize to her. I'm not trying to. He stopped, seemed to reconsider his approach. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter, less like he was managing a problem and more like he was talking to an actual person. Look, I know this is a terrible morning for you. I'm sorry I barged in, but I heard water pouring into my daughter's bedroom and I didn't have time to wait for you to answer the door. Daughter. That word shifted something, made him slightly more human and slightly more complicated. Is she okay? Emily asked, despite herself. She's at school, but her ceiling's got a decent-sized water stain now and probably some damage I'll need to assess. He paused. I'm Daniel, by the way. Daniel Hayes. Emily didn't offer her name, didn't feel like she owed him that. Congratulations on owning a building. His mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, but close. You're upset, that's fair. I'm standing in a flooded apartment in a towel talking to my landlord. Upset doesn't really cover it. Right. He glanced toward the bathroom, then back at her face, still keeping his eyes up. I'm going to call my plumber. He'll be here within the hour. In the meantime, you should probably get dressed. It should have sounded condescending. It didn't. It sounded practical, almost gentle, which somehow made it worse. Emily wanted to argue, wanted to tell him she didn't need his help, didn't want his plumber, didn't care about his property management excuses. But her shift at the diner started in 40 minutes, and she was still dripping wet, and her bathroom was destroyed, and she didn't actually have the luxury of pride right now. Fine, she said. Daniel nodded, turned toward the door, stopped. I really am sorry about this. And then he left, closing the door quietly behind him. Emily stood there in the hallway, water pooling around her feet, and tried to figure out what the hell had just happened. The plumber showed up 37 minutes later. His name was Rick. He had a thick Boston accent, and he looked like he'd been fixing pipes since before Emily was born. He took one look at the disaster under her sink, let out a low whistle, and said, Yeah, this whole assembly's got to go. You're lucky it didn't flood worse. Emily, now dressed in her work uniform, black pants, white shirt, coffee-stained apron, watched him work. She'd called the diner to say she'd be late. Her manager hadn't been happy, but he hadn't fired her either, which felt like the best she could hope for. How long will it take? She asked. Rick was already pulling tools out of his bag, laying them out with the precision of someone who'd done this 10,000 times. Couple hours maybe, depends what else I find when I get in there. Old buildings like this, you pull one thing and 3 other things fall apart. Great. Perfect. Exactly what she wanted to hear. And the cost? Rick paused, looked up at her. Danny said he's covering it. Danny. Because of course the billionaire landlord went by Danny. Probably had people call him that while he played golf at country clubs and made decisions about other people's lives over scotch. He doesn't need to do that, Emily said. He owns the building. Pipe maintenance is his responsibility. Rick shrugged. You want to argue with him about it? Be my guest. But I'm getting paid either way. Emily didn't have the energy to argue. And honestly, she didn't have the money to pay for this herself. Her savings account had $73 in it. The pipe repair would probably cost 10 times that. Fine, she said again. That seemed to be her word of the day. She left Rick to his work and headed for the diner, her hair still damp, her mood somewhere below zero. Chun. The breakfast rush was exactly as terrible as she'd anticipated. Overcrowded tables, impatient customers, a kitchen that was running behind because the new cook couldn't work the grill properly. Emily moved on autopilot, pouring coffee, delivering plates, smiling at people who didn't smile back. Her mind kept drifting back to the apartment, to the water, to Daniel Hayes standing in her hallway, carefully not looking at anything except her face, speaking in that calm, controlled way that people with money always seem to have. Like nothing could actually rattle them because they had enough resources to solve any problem. She wondered what that felt like. Around 11, during a brief lull, Emily pulled out her phone and did something she immediately regretted. She Googled him. Daniel Hayes. The results were immediate and overwhelming. Hayes Development Group. Real estate mogul. Billionaire philanthropist, tech investor. There were photos. Lots of them. Daniel in a tuxedo at some charity gala, standing next to people Emily vaguely recognized from magazine covers. Daniel cutting a ribbon at a new building opening. Daniel speaking at a conference, gesturing with one hand while a PowerPoint presentation glowed behind him. And then, tucked in among the professional shots, Daniel with a little girl. She couldn't have been more than 6. Dark curly hair, gap-toothed smile, wearing a princess dress and rain boots. The caption identified her as Sophie Hayes. The article mentioned that Daniel was a single father, that his wife had passed away 4 years ago, that he'd scaled back some of his business commitments to focus on raising his daughter. Emily closed the browser. She didn't want to know that. Didn't want him to be humanized. It was easier when he was just the landlord who never fixed anything, the billionaire who owned buildings full of people struggling to pay rent. It was harder when he was a dad who'd lost his wife and was trying to raise a kid on his own. She shoved the phone back in her apron pocket and returned to work. By the time her shift ended at 3, Emily was exhausted. Her feet hurt, her back ached, and she smelled like a combination of bacon grease and industrial coffee. All she wanted was to go home, take a shower, assuming her bathroom was functional, and sleep for 12 hours. Instead, she came home to find Daniel Hayes sitting on the stairs outside her apartment. He looked up when he heard her footsteps. "Hey!" Emily stopped halfway up the staircase. "What are you doing here?" "Waiting for Rick to finish. Thought you'd want an update." "You could have texted." "I don't have your number." Right, because they weren't friends. Weren't anything, really, except landlord and tenant who'd had one extremely awkward interaction this morning. Emily climbed the rest of the stairs, stopped in front of him. "Is it fixed?" "Mostly. He had to replace the whole pipe assembly and part of the cabinet frame. There's still some drying out to do, but you've got running water again." "Great." Daniel stood. He was taller than she'd realized this morning, 6'2" maybe. She had to tilt her head back slightly to meet his eyes. "He said you should run a dehumidifier for a few days. I'm having one delivered this evening." "You don't need to, I know I don't need to. I want to." He said it firmly, but not unkindly. "This is my building, my responsibility. You shouldn't have to deal with mold because the plumbing failed." Emily wanted to argue, wanted to maintain her anger, her sense of righteous frustration at a system that left people like her one broken pipe away from disaster, while people like him just threw money at problems until they disappeared. But she was tired. So tired. "Okay," she said quietly. "Thank you." Something shifted in Daniel's expression, like he hadn't expected gratitude. "You're welcome." They stood there for a moment, neither quite sure what to say next. Finally, Daniel cleared his throat. "Rick left his card. If you have any other issues, call him directly. He'll bill me." "I'm not going to abuse that." "I didn't think you would." He paused. "But seriously, this building's old. Things break. Don't suffer in silence because you're worried about bothering someone." Emily almost laughed. "You've clearly never rented before." "No," he admitted. "I haven't. Of course not. People like Daniel Hayes didn't rent. They bought. They owned. They existed in a completely different economic reality." "Well, in the rental world, you learn pretty quick not to expect much," Emily said. "You call about a broken heater and maybe someone shows up in 3 weeks. Maybe. Usually you just buy a space heater and deal with it." Daniel's jaw tightened. "That's not acceptable. It's reality." "It shouldn't be." Emily studied him. He looked genuinely bothered, like he'd just discovered something unpleasant about a system he'd participated in without fully understanding. "Are you telling me you didn't know your tenants were living like that?" "I have a property management company that's supposed to handle maintenance requests promptly. I pay them specifically to make sure buildings are maintained properly." His voice had gone cold. Controlled fury, carefully contained. "Apparently they haven't been doing their job. So fire them." "I'm considering it." They looked at each other. Emily could feel the weight of the day pressing down on her shoulders, the flood, the stress, the exhaustion. And now this conversation, which felt too big and too complicated for a Tuesday afternoon in a dingy stairwell. "I need to go inside," she said finally. Daniel nodded, stepped aside to let her pass. "Of course." Emily unlocked her door, pushed it open. The apartment smelled like cleaning supplies and new plastic. Rick had left a note on the counter. "All set. Call if you need anything." She heard Daniel's footsteps behind her, turned to find him standing in her doorway, not coming in but not quite leaving either. "What?" she asked. He hesitated. Then, "I meant what I said earlier, about talking to the property management company. I'm going to look into every maintenance request that's been filed for this building in the last 2 years. If things haven't been handled properly, I'll fix them. Why? Because it's the right thing to do. Emily wanted to believe that, wanted to think that people could just decide to do better and then actually follow through, but she'd been disappointed too many times to take it at face value. "We'll see," she said. Daniel smiled slightly. It was a tired smile, like he understood exactly what she wasn't saying. "Yeah, we will." He turned to leave, made it 2 steps, then looked back. "I never got your name." Emily considered not telling him, considered keeping that small piece of privacy, maintaining the distance between landlord and tenant, rich and poor, his world and hers. But then she thought about the way he'd looked at only her face this morning, the way he'd fixed her problem without making her feel small, the way he'd apologized. "Emily," she said. "Emily Carter." "Nice to officially meet you, Emily Carter." He gave her a small nod. Even if the circumstances were terrible. "Yeah," Emily agreed. They really were. Daniel left. Emily closed the door, locked it, and leaned back against the wood. Her bathroom was fixed, her water worked, a dehumidifier was being delivered, and her billionaire landlord apparently felt guilty enough about the state of his building to promise changes. She should feel relieved. Instead, she felt unsettled, like something had shifted that she couldn't quite name, like the careful, controlled distance she maintained from other people, especially people with power, people with money, people who could hurt her, had developed a crack. Emily pushed away from the door and headed for the shower. She had another shift tomorrow. Bills to pay. A life to maintain. She didn't have time to think about Daniel Hayes and his dark eyes and his careful manners and the way he'd called her by her name like it mattered. She didn't have time for any of that. But as she stood under the water, blessedly hot, blessedly consistent, she couldn't quite stop herself from wondering what would happen if he actually kept his promises. Wednesday morning, Emily woke to a text from an unknown number. "This is Daniel Hayes. Got your number from the tenant contact list. Hope that's okay. Dehumidifier should be there by 10 a.m. Let me know if there are any issues." She stared at the message for a long moment, tried to decide if it was appropriate for her landlord to text her personally, decided she didn't actually care. "It's fine, thanks." She didn't expect a response. Got one anyway. "Also, I'm meeting with the property management company this afternoon. If you have specific complaints about maintenance issues, now's the time to mention them." Emily's first instinct was to ignore it, to not get involved, to not risk making waves that could somehow come back on her. Her second instinct was to think about the broken heater last winter, the leaking window in the bedroom, the stove burner that only worked half the time, the list of small, accumulating problems she'd learned to live with because complaining felt pointless. She typed out a message, deleted it, typed another one. The heating was inconsistent all winter. Bedroom window leaks when it rains. Kitchen stove has a burner that doesn't ignite properly. Hallway light on the second floor has been out for 3 months. Send. The response came back fast. "Got it. I'll make sure those get addressed. Thank you for telling me." Emily set the phone down, felt something uncomfortable twisting in her chest. Hope, maybe. Or the fear of hope, which was somehow worse. She got ready for work. The dehumidifier arrived at 9:47, delivered by a guy who hauled it up the stairs without complaint and set it up in her bathroom like it was the most normal thing in the world. By Thursday, the bedroom window had been repaired. By Friday, someone came to fix the stove. By the following Monday, there was a new light fixture in the second-floor hallway, bright and functional. Emily watched it all happen with a growing sense of disbelief. Things didn't work like this. Landlords didn't suddenly start caring. Buildings like hers didn't get fixed just because someone complained. But apparently when your landlord was a billionaire with a guilty conscience, they did. She didn't see Daniel again that week. Didn't hear from him either, except for one more text on Friday night. Property management company has been replaced. New team starts Monday. They have instructions to prioritize maintenance requests and respond within 24 hours. Let me know if that doesn't happen. Emily read the message 3 times, tried to figure out what she was supposed to say to that. Settled on, "Okay." Another fast response. "I mean it. You have my number now. Use it if you need to." She didn't respond to that one. Didn't know what to say. Didn't know what it meant that her landlord was personally invested in whether or not her apartment was livable. Didn't know why part of her, a small, stupid, dangerous part, kind of wanted to find a reason to text him again. Emily deleted the thought before it could take root. She had enough problems without adding a complicated, impossible, ridiculous attraction to a man who lived in a completely different universe. She went to work, came home, lived her life, and tried very hard not to think about dark eyes and careful voices and the way Daniel Hayes had looked at her like she mattered. It almost worked. The knock came on a Saturday morning, 10 days after the flood. Emily was in the kitchen making coffee, actual coffee, not the instant kind, which felt like a small luxury she'd decided to allow herself after getting her first paycheck that included overtime. She'd worked 6 doubles in 2 weeks, and her body was protesting, but her bank account had crept up past $200 for the first time in months. The knock was soft, tentative, not the aggressive pounding of someone with a complaint. She wasn't expecting anyone. Emily set down her mug and went to the door, checked the peephole out of habit. The hallway was dim as always, but she could make out a familiar silhouette. Daniel Hayes. Her stomach did something complicated that she refused to acknowledge. She unlocked the door, opened it partway. Hi. He had a toolbox in one hand. Wearing jeans again, dark blue this time, and a gray Henley that looked soft and expensive. His hair was slightly disheveled, like he'd been running his hands through it. Hey, sorry to bother you on a weekend. Is something broken again?
No, actually, I'm here to finish something Rick started. He lifted the toolbox slightly. The cabinet frame under your sink. He had to cut out the water damage section, but he didn't have time to replace it properly. I told him I'd handle it. Emily blinked. You're going to fix my cabinet, if that's okay with you. You own dozens of buildings, and you're going to personally repair a cabinet in one apartment. Daniel's mouth quirked, almost a smile. I know how to use tools. And I'm already here. My daughter's at a birthday party until 3, so I've got time. There were about 17 things Emily wanted to say to that. She settled on, you don't have to do this. I know. He met her eyes, steady, calm. But I'd like to, if you'll let me. She should say no. Should maintain boundaries. Should not let her billionaire landlord into her apartment to do manual labor on a Saturday morning, like this was a normal thing that normal people did. Emily stepped back and opened the door wider. Okay? Daniel came inside, set the toolbox down near the bathroom, and looked around with the same assessing gaze he'd had during the flood. But this time it felt less like evaluation and more like genuine curiosity. You've lived here 2 years? He asked. Yeah. It's nice. You've made it feel like home. Emily followed his gaze, trying to see the apartment through his eyes. The secondhand furniture she'd collected piece by piece from thrift stores and Craigslist. The plants on the windowsill, mostly succulents because they were hard to kill. The artwork she'd made herself during a phase where she thought she might salvage her design career before reality had beaten that optimism out of her. It's small, she said. Small can be good, easier to take care of. He headed for the bathroom, knelt down in front of the sink. Do you mind if I work while we talk? Or would you prefer quiet? I don't mind talking. It felt like a confession. Like admitting she was lonely enough to want conversation with someone who was basically a stranger, even if that stranger happened to be fixing her cabinet. Daniel opened the toolbox, pulled out a measuring tape. How long have you worked at the diner? Almost 2 years, since I moved here. You like it? Emily leaned against the door frame, coffee mug in hand. It pays rent. That's not the same as liking it. No, she agreed. It's not. He measured the cabinet opening, made a note on a piece of paper he'd pulled from his pocket. What would you do if money wasn't an issue? The question caught her off guard. Most people didn't ask things like that. Most people in her life understood that money was always an issue, that dreams were expensive luxuries you couldn't afford when you were trying to survive. Graphic design, she said after a moment. That's what I went to school for. Daniel looked up at her. Why aren't you doing that? Because the market's oversaturated and entry-level jobs want 5 years of experience and nobody's hiring and I have bills to pay. She said it flatly, without emotion. Facts, not complaints. I freelanced for a while, but it wasn't enough to live on, so I got a real job. Waitressing is a real job. You know what I mean? He did. She could see it in his expression. Have you kept up with design work on the side? Sometimes, when I have energy, which isn't often. Emily took a sip of coffee. Why are you asking me this? curiosity. And maybe because I'm trying to understand why someone with a college degree is struggling to make rent in a building I own. He said it carefully, like he was aware the words could sound condescending, but was trying not to let them. I don't think most landlords know their tenants' stories. Most landlords don't care about their tenants' stories. Fair point. Daniel pulled out a piece of wood from the toolbox, pre-cut, she noticed, which meant he'd measured before coming over. Had planned this. I'm trying to do better than most landlords. Why? He was quiet for a moment, fitting the wood into place, checking the alignment. Because I can afford to, and because I didn't realize how bad things had gotten until you told me. He glanced at her. That bathroom flood was a wake-up call. I'd been trusting other people to manage these properties, and they weren't doing it right. That's on me. Emily wanted to argue, wanted to point out that he could have checked sooner, could have cared earlier, could have not been so disconnected from the reality of how people lived in buildings he profited from. But he was here, on a Saturday, fixing her cabinet himself instead of sending someone else to do it. That had to count for something. Your property management company, she said. The new one. Are they actually better? So far, I've been reviewing every maintenance request personally for the first month to make sure they're responsive. He started drilling pilot holes, the sound sharp and precise in the small bathroom. Have you had to contact them? No, everything's been working. Good. He paused. But if something breaks, call them or text me, either one. I'm not going to text you every time I have a problem. Why not? Because you're my landlord, not my personal maintenance hotline. Daniel set down the drill, looked at her directly. What if I want to be both? The question hung in the air between them. Emily felt her pulse kick up slightly, her brain scrambling to figure out what he meant by that, and whether she was reading too much into a simple offer of help. I don't need special treatment, she said finally. I'm not offering special treatment, I'm offering basic human decency. He picked up the drill again, started securing the wood frame. Everyone in this building should feel comfortable reaching out when something's wrong. You're just the first person who actually told me the truth about what's been happening. Emily watched him work. His hands were steady, confident. He knew what he was doing. This wasn't some rich guy playing at being handy. He'd clearly done this kind of work before. Where'd you learn to fix things? She asked. My dad. He was a contractor. Taught me and my brother how to do basic repairs when we were kids. Daniel's voice softened slightly. He died when I was 22. Heart attack. Sudden. I'm sorry. Thanks. He didn't look up, kept working. He's the one who got me interested in real estate. He used to flip houses on the side, trying to build something for the family. Never quite got there before he passed, but it inspired me to try. And now you own half the city. Not half. Maybe a tenth. He said it with a slight smile, like he knew he was being ridiculous. I got lucky. Right place, right time, right investments. Then I met my wife, and she was good at the business side, better than me, and we built the company together. Past tense. Met. Was. Emily remembered the Google search. The little girl in the princess dress. Sophie's mom. Daniel's hands stilled for just a second. Then he continued working. Yeah, Caroline. She passed 4 years ago. Cancer. It was fast. 6 months from diagnosis to the end. That's horrible. It was. He finished securing the last screw, tested the frame's stability. Solid. Sophie barely remembers her. She was 2 when Caroline died. Sometimes she asks questions and I try to answer them, but mostly she just knows her mom isn't here. Emily didn't know what to say to that, didn't have platitudes that would make it better. So she just said, that must be hard. It is, but we manage. Daniel stood up, brushed sawdust off his jeans. She's a good kid, resilient, probably more resilient than me. He said it lightly, but Emily heard the weight underneath. The grief he carried quietly. The same way she carried her own disappointments, not advertised, not performed, just present. The cabinet's done, Daniel said, gesturing to his work. Should hold up fine now. Let me know if you notice any issues. I will, thank you. They stood there in the small bathroom doorway, close enough that Emily could smell sawdust and something clean, like soap or laundry detergent. She was suddenly very aware of the fact that she was still in her pajamas, old yoga pants and a faded t-shirt from a 5K she'd run 3 years ago, and that her hair was pulled into a messy bun,
and she probably looked like she'd just rolled out of bed, which she had. Daniel seemed entirely unbothered by any of that. I should get going. Need to pick up Sophie soon. Right. Of course. He packed up his tools, closed the toolbox. Emily walked him to the door, feeling oddly reluctant to see him leave, which was stupid. They barely knew each other. He was her landlord. This was a professional interaction, not a social call. At the door, Daniel paused. Can I ask you something? Sure. That artwork in your living room. The abstract piece with the blue and gold. Did you make that? Emily glanced back at the canvas hanging over her second-hand couch. She'd painted it during a weekend when she couldn't afford to go out but needed to do something with her hands, something that wasn't work or worry. Yeah, it's nothing special. I disagree. It's really good. You have a strong sense of color and composition. She looked at him, trying to figure out if he was just being polite, but his expression was genuine, interested. Thanks, she said quietly. Daniel smiled, actually smiled, not just the almost smile he'd been doing. It changed his whole face, made him look younger, less controlled. I mean it. If you ever want to show me more of your work, I'd like to see it. Why? Because I think you're talented and you're wasting it carrying plates. He said it matter-of-factly, like it was obvious. And because I'm curious about how you see the world. Emily's heart was doing something irregular in her chest. She ignored it. I'll think about it. Good enough. He shifted the toolbox to his other hand. Have a good weekend, Emily. You too. She closed the door after he left, locked it, leaned against it. This was dangerous, whatever this was. She couldn't afford to develop feelings for Daniel Hayes. Couldn't afford to read into kind gestures and genuine compliments and the way he looked at her artwork like it mattered. He lived in a penthouse. She lived in a walk-up with questionable plumbing. He had a daughter and a dead wife and a billion-dollar company. She had student loans and a waitressing job and a future that felt uncertain at best. They existed in different universes that had briefly overlapped due to a broken pipe and unfortunate timing. That was all this was. Emily pushed away from the door and went to finish her coffee, but she couldn't stop thinking about the way Daniel had said her name, like it meant something. The text came that evening while Emily was folding laundry. Hope the cabinet works out. Also, I know this is probably overstepping, but I have a friend who runs a design agency downtown. They're looking for freelancers. Would you want an introduction? Emily stared at the message for a full minute. Part of her wanted to say no immediately, wanted to maintain her pride, her independence, her carefully constructed walls that kept disappointment at a manageable distance. Part of her was tired of saying no to opportunities just because they came from unexpected places. She typed, "Why would you do that for me?" His response, "Because you're good at what you do and you deserve a chance to use it. No strings attached, just an introduction. What you do with it is up to you." Emily sat on her bed, surrounded by half-folded laundry, and tried to figure out what the catch was. There had to be a catch. People didn't just help other people for no reason, especially not billionaires helping broke waitresses they barely knew. But she couldn't find the angle, couldn't see what Daniel would gain from this except maybe feeling good about himself for helping someone. And maybe that was enough. Maybe some people actually did things just because they were decent. "Okay," she typed. "I'd appreciate that. Great. I'll reach out to her and give you her contact info. Her name's Lisa Chen. She's good people." "Thank you. You're welcome." Emily set the phone down, went back to folding laundry, tried not to think about the fact that her life might be about to change because a stranger had walked into her bathroom during a flood and decided she was worth paying attention to. 3 days later, Emily had a phone call with Lisa Chen. Lisa was sharp, funny, and exactly the kind of person Emily would want to work with. She looked at Emily's portfolio, the one Emily had hastily updated the night before, pulling together her best work from college and the few freelance projects she'd managed to complete, and didn't pull punches. "Your technical skills are solid," Lisa said. "Color theory's good. Typography needs work, but that's fixable. What I'm really interested in is your conceptual thinking. Walk me through this campaign redesign you did for that coffee company." Emily walked her through it, explained her reasoning, her process, the client feedback. She felt rusty, stumbling over industry terms she hadn't used in 2 years, but Lisa seemed unbothered. "Okay," Lisa said when Emily finished. "I've got a project that might be good for you. Local nonprofit needs a rebrand, small budget, tight timeline. It's not glamorous, but it's real work. You interested? Yes. Absolutely yes. Great. I'll send over the details. Hourly rate is standard for freelancers, net 30 payment terms. If this goes well, there might be more projects down the line. Emily felt something unfamiliar rising in her chest, something that felt dangerously close to hope.
Thank you, she managed. Don't thank me yet. Prove you can deliver. Lisa's voice softened slightly.
But for what it's worth, Daniel said you were worth taking a chance on. He doesn't say that about many people. After the call ended, Emily sat at her kitchen table staring at her laptop. She had work, design work, real work, because Daniel Hayes had decided to care. She picked up her phone, found his number, typed out a message.
I just talked to Lisa. Got a project.
Thank you for the introduction.
His response came quickly. That's great. Congratulations. You earned it. I wouldn't have gotten the chance without you. You would have eventually. I just sped up the timeline. Emily smiled despite herself. You're annoyingly humble for a billionaire. I'll take that as a compliment.
It was. She hesitated, then added, Can I buy you coffee sometime? To say thank you properly. The three dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. You don't need to do that, I know. But I'd like to. Another pause, then, Okay. When are you free? Emily checked her work schedule. She'd dropped some shifts at the diner to make time for the design project. Thursday afternoon? Thursday works. There's a place called Brew and Company on 6th Street. 2 o'clock? I'll be there. She set the phone down, heart beating faster than it should be. This was just coffee. Just a thank you. Professional courtesy. It wasn't a date. It absolutely was not a date. Emily repeated that to herself several times and almost believed it. Thursday arrived with October weather, cool air, bright sun, leaves starting to turn. Emily changed her outfit 3 times before settling on jeans and a navy sweater that looked casual but put together. Not trying too hard. Not like she cared what Daniel thought. Except she did care, which was a problem. Brew and Coach was the kind of coffee shop that Emily rarely went to. Exposed brick walls, expensive espresso machines, artisan pastries under glass. The kind of place where a latte cost $6 and came with foam art. Daniel was already there when she arrived, sitting at a corner table with 2 cups in front of him. He stood when he saw her. Hey, I got you a cappuccino. Hope that's okay. That's perfect. Thank you. Emily sat down, wrapped her hands around the warm cup. You didn't have to buy. I wanted to. He settled back into his chair. How's the project going? Good? Challenging? But good. I forgot how much I missed this kind of work. What's the nonprofit? Youth literacy program. They need a new logo, updated website, some marketing materials. Nothing huge, but it matters. She took a sip of the cappuccino. It was perfectly made, rich and smooth. Lisa's been great to work with. She's one of the best in the city. You're in good hands. They talked about design for a while. Daniel asked intelligent questions, seemed genuinely interested in her process. Emily found herself relaxing, the conversation flowing easier than she'd expected. At some point, the topic shifted. So how's Sophie? Emily asked. Daniel's expression softened the way it always did when his daughter came up. She's good. Currently obsessed with dinosaurs. I've learned more about the Cretaceous period in the last 2 weeks than I thought possible. Emily laughed. That sounds exhausting. It's actually kind of great. Her curiosity is endless. She'll ask 100 questions about one thing and then move on to something completely different. He paused. She asked me yesterday why you don't come over for dinner. Emily's coffee cup stopped halfway to her mouth. What? She saw you in the hallway last week when I was picking her up from a play date. I mentioned you lived downstairs, and apparently that was enough for her to decide we're friends. Daniel looked slightly embarrassed. I told her you were probably busy, but she's persistent. She's 6 and she's already networking for you? Apparently. He smiled. You don't have to, obviously. I know that's probably weird. It was weird, definitely weird, but also kind of sweet. What does she like to eat? Emily heard herself ask. Daniel blinked. Are you seriously considering this? I'm asking a question. That's not the same as committing. She likes pasta, and chicken nuggets, and vegetables if you hide them well enough. He was watching her carefully now. Why are you asking? Because I cook sometimes, and I have too much food for one person, and if your daughter wants to have dinner with the neighbor, maybe that's not the worst idea. Emily said it quickly before she could change her mind. No pressure, just if you want. Something shifted in Daniel's expression. Surprise, maybe, or something else she couldn't quite read. Saturday, he offered. Around 6? Saturday works. Can I bring anything? Just yourselves. They finished their coffee, talked about nothing important, the weather, the city, a movie Daniel had watched recently that Sophie had loved. Easy conversation, comfortable. When they left the coffee shop, Daniel walked Emily to her car, even though it was only a block away. Thanks for meeting me, Emily said. Thanks for inviting me, and for agreeing to have dinner with a 6-year-old and her overly grateful father.
I haven't cooked for anyone in a long time. Don't set your expectations too high. I won't. He hesitated, then added, For what it's worth, I think you're braver than you give yourself credit for. What makes you say that?
Because you took a chance on coffee with someone who barged into your bathroom, and you're taking a chance on a design project after 2 years away from the field, and you're willing to have dinner with a kid you don't know because she asked. He met her eyes. That takes courage. Emily didn't know what to say, felt something warm and uncomfortable spreading through her chest. I should go, she managed. Yeah, me too. I've got to pick up Sophie from school. They stood there for another moment, neither quite moving. Finally, Daniel stepped back. See you Saturday, Emily. See you Saturday. She drove home in a daze, her mind spinning. This was getting complicated. This thing, whatever it was, with Daniel. She liked him. That was the problem. She actually liked him. Liked the way he listened when she talked. Liked his quiet competence and his devotion to his daughter. Liked that he fixed her cabinet himself instead of sending someone else. Liked that he'd introduced her to Lisa without expecting anything in return. Liked him in a way that felt dangerous and inevitable and completely impossible. Because he was still her landlord. Still a billionaire. Still living in a completely different world. And she was still broke. Still struggling. Still trying to build a life out of scraps and determination. But Saturday was coming, and Emily found herself looking forward to it more than she'd looked forward to anything in a very long time. She stopped at the grocery store on the way home, started planning a menu. If she was going to do this, she was going to do it right. Saturday came too fast and not fast enough. Emily spent Friday evening cleaning her apartment like she was expecting a health inspection. Scrubbing counters that were already clean, rearranging throw pillows, second-guessing every decorating choice she'd made in 2 years. The place was small and shabby and nothing like what Daniel was probably used to, but it was hers and she wanted it to look decent. She'd settled on making lasagna. It was hard to mess up, fed multiple people, and felt substantial enough for a proper dinner. She'd also bought ingredients for a salad and garlic bread, and in a moment of optimism, she was now questioning a small chocolate cake from the bakery down the street. By Saturday afternoon, her kitchen smelled like tomatoes and garlic and cheese, and Emily was cycling through every possible disaster scenario. What if Sophie hated lasagna? What if she had allergies Emily didn't know about? What if this whole thing was awkward and uncomfortable and proved once and for all that she and Daniel existed in incompatible worlds? The knock came at exactly 6 o'clock. Emily wiped her hands on a dish towel, checked her reflection in the microwave door, presentable, she looked presentable, and opened the door. Daniel stood there holding a bottle of wine, and next to him was Sophie. She was smaller than Emily had expected from the photos. Big dark eyes, curly hair pulled into 2 lopsided pigtails, wearing a purple dress with sparkly sneakers. She was clutching a stuffed dinosaur that looked well-loved, its green fabric faded from countless adventures. Hi, Sophie said immediately. I'm Sophie. Are you Emily? Daddy said you live here and you're really nice and you make art. Can I see your art? Daniel put a hand on his daughter's shoulder. Sophie, breathe. I am breathing. See? Sophie took an exaggerated breath to demonstrate. Emily couldn't help but smile. Hi, Sophie. Yes, I'm Emily. And yes, you can see my art after dinner. Deal? Deal. Sophie thrust out her hand for a handshake, very formal, very serious. Emily shook it solemnly. Come on in. They entered, Sophie immediately darting toward the living room to examine everything with the intense curiosity of a 6-year-old. Daniel stayed closer to the door, holding out the wine. I didn't know if you drank, but I figured it couldn't hurt, he said. I drink occasionally, thank you. Emily took the bottle. It was nice, probably expensive. The kind of wine that came from vineyards with Italian names she couldn't pronounce. Make yourself comfortable. Dinner's almost ready. Daniel glanced toward Sophie, who was now inspecting the succulent collection on the windowsill with great interest. She's excited. Fair warning, she's going to ask you about 100 questions. I can handle 100 questions. Famous last words. They moved into the kitchen, Daniel offering to help with anything that needed doing. Emily put him in charge of the garlic bread while she finished the salad, and it felt strangely natural, the two of them moving around her small kitchen like they'd done this before. Sophie appeared in the doorway, dinosaur tucked under one arm. "What's for dinner?" "Lasagna," Emily said. Sophie's face lit up. "I love lasagna. Daddy makes it sometimes, but he always burns the cheese on top." "I do not always burn it," Daniel protested. "You burned it last time." "That was once." "And the time before that?" Daniel looked at Emily. "She has a very selective memory." Emily grinned. "Noted. I promise not to burn the cheese." Dinner happened around Emily's small kitchen table, the three of them squeezed in close. Sophie kept up a running commentary on everything. The food was good, her dinosaur's name was Rex, and he was a vegetarian, which was unusual for a T-Rex. Her best friend at school had just lost another tooth. She'd learned about volcanoes this week. And did Emily know that lava could reach temperatures of over 2,000 degrees? Emily answered questions, asked some of her own, and watched the way Daniel interacted with his daughter. Patient, attentive. Gently redirecting when Sophie got too off topic, but never dismissive. He clearly adored her, and Sophie clearly knew she was loved. It made something ache in Emily's chest. Good ache. The kind that reminded her what family was supposed to look like. "This is really good," Daniel said, gesturing to his plate. "You weren't kidding about cooking. I used to cook more before I started working doubles all the time. It's nice to have an excuse to make something real." Emily glanced at Sophie, who was carefully picking mushrooms out of her lasagna and setting them on the edge of her plate. "Not a mushroom fan?" Sophie shook her head vigorously. "They're squishy, but the rest is really good. Can I have more?" "Absolutely." After dinner, Sophie reminded Emily about the promise to see her art. Emily led her into the living room, showed her the blue and gold canvas Daniel had noticed, plus a few smaller pieces she'd done over the years. A watercolor series of city buildings, some pen and ink sketches, a collage she'd made from magazine clippings. Sophie studied each one with intense seriousness, hands clasped behind her back like she was touring a museum. "These are really pretty. I like the colors. Do you ever paint dinosaurs?" "I haven't yet." "You should. Dinosaurs are the best thing to paint." "I'll keep that in mind." Daniel had stayed in the kitchen, giving them space, but Emily could see him watching from the doorway. His expression was soft, unguarded. When Sophie wandered over to examine the bookshelf, Daniel joined Emily by the artwork. "She likes you," he said quietly. "She's easy to like." "Not everyone thinks so. She can be a lot." "She's curious and enthusiastic. That's not a bad thing." Emily glanced at him. "You're doing a good job with her." Something flickered across Daniel's face. Gratitude, maybe. Or relief. "I'm trying. Some days are better than others." "That's parenting, isn't it? Some days are better than others." "You sound like you know." "I don't have kids, but I remember being one." Emily smiled slightly. "My parents weren't perfect, but they tried. That's what mattered." Daniel was quiet for a moment. Then, "Caroline used to say the same thing. The trying was enough." It was the first time he'd mentioned his wife directly. Emily didn't know how to respond, so she just said, "She sounds wise." She was. Daniel's voice was soft. Not sad exactly, reflective. "She would have liked you." Before Emily could figure out what to say to that, Sophie called out from across the room, "Daddy! Emily has the same dinosaur book I have. Can we read it?" "If Emily doesn't mind." Emily shook her head. "I don't mind." They ended up on the couch, Sophie wedged between them with the dinosaur book open on her lap. She insisted on reading parts of it herself, sounding out words with determined concentration, occasionally asking for help with bigger terms like velociraptor and paleontologist. Daniel's arm was stretched along the back of the couch, not quite touching Emily, but close enough that she was aware of it, aware of him. The warmth of his presence, the quiet way he encouraged Sophie, the way he smiled when his daughter got excited about a fact she'd just learned. This felt dangerous. This felt like something Emily could get used to, and that terrified her. Around 8:30, Sophie started yawning. Daniel noticed immediately, checked his watch. Time to head home, kiddo. But I'm not tired, Sophie protested, even as she yawned again. Sure you're not. Daniel stood, scooped her up easily. She wrapped her arms around his neck, rested her head on his shoulder, already half asleep. Emily walked them to the door. Thanks for coming. Thank you for having us, Daniel said. This was really nice. It was. Emily meant it. The evening had been easy in a way she hadn't expected. Comfortable. We should do it again sometime. Yeah? Daniel shifted Sophie slightly, her weight familiar in his arms. You sure? I know we kind of invaded your space tonight. I invited you, and I had a good time. Sophie lifted her head slightly. Me too. Emily's the best. Can she come to our place next time? Daniel looked at Emily, question in his eyes. Emily felt her heart do something complicated. Saying yes meant getting more involved, meant crossing another line from casual acquaintance to something more deliberate. But Sophie was looking at her with those big, hopeful eyes, and Daniel was waiting, and Emily realized she didn't want to say no. Sure, she said. I'd like that. Next Saturday? Daniel asked. I make a decent spaghetti. Well, decent-ish. Sophie can attest to my cooking skills. You burn stuff sometimes, but it's still good, Sophie mumbled, eyes already closing again. Emily laughed. Next Saturday sounds perfect. After they left, Emily cleaned up the kitchen in a daze, loading the dishwasher, putting away leftovers, replaying the evening in her mind. She'd been alone for so long, by choice mostly. After her last relationship had imploded, her ex-boyfriend who'd left when things got hard, when money got tight, when Emily stopped being fun because she was too busy trying to survive. She'd decided it was easier to stay single, safer, less risk of getting hurt. But tonight hadn't felt risky. It had felt warm, natural. Like maybe she'd been wrong about what she was capable of handling. Her phone buzzed, a text from Daniel. Sophie's already asleep. She told me 3 times on the drive home that you're now her friend and we have to see you all the time. Emily smiled. I'm honored to be officially approved by a 6-year-old. She's a tough critic. You should feel accomplished. How do you feel? The question was bolder than Emily intended, more direct. She almost deleted it, but the message was already sent. The 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. I feel like I haven't enjoyed an evening that much in a long time. So thank you for everything. You're welcome. Get some sleep. I'm sure Sophie will have you up early. Probably. Good night, Emily. Good night. She set the phone down, heart beating faster than it should be. This was happening, whatever this was, and Emily was terrified and exhilarated in equal measure. The week passed in a blur of design work and diner shifts. The nonprofit project was going well. Lisa had loved Emily's initial concepts and given her the green light to develop them further. It felt good to be using her brain for something creative again, to remember that she was capable of more than just carrying plates and pouring coffee. She texted with Daniel a few times during the week. Nothing serious, just small updates. Sophie had brought a fossil to show and tell. The design project was progressing. Daniel had actually managed not to burn dinner twice in a row. Easy conversation, the kind that felt like building something without quite acknowledging what that something was. Saturday arrived with crisp autumn weather, the kind that made Emily want to wear sweaters and drink hot cider. Daniel had texted her his address, not the building she lived in, but another property across town. Nicer neighborhood, trees lining the streets, buildings with actual architectural character. His apartment was on the 3rd floor. Corner unit, large windows, exponentially bigger than Emily's place. She knocked, heard Sophie's excited shout of, "She's here!" from inside, and then the door swung open. Sophie was wearing a dinosaur t-shirt and jeans with paint stains. "Hi, we're making garlic bread. Well, Daddy's making it. I'm helping. Come in." Emily stepped inside and tried not to gawk. The apartment was beautiful. Hardwood floors, exposed brick on one wall, furniture that looked both expensive and comfortable. But it also looked lived in. There were toys scattered in one corner, drawings stuck to the refrigerator with magnets, a stack of picture books on the coffee table. It looked like a home, not a showpiece. Daniel emerged from the kitchen wearing an apron that said "Dad Jokes Loading," with a progress bar underneath. He looked embarrassed. Sophie picked this out for Father's Day. "It's very you," Emily said, grinning. "I don't even make that many dad jokes." "You made 3 at breakfast," Sophie pointed out. 3 is a reasonable number. Emily followed them into the kitchen, where Daniel had clearly been cooking for a while. Sauce simmering on the stove, pasta water ready to boil, garlic bread prepared and waiting for the oven. "Can I help with anything?" Emily asked. "You're a guest. You don't have to help." "I want to." Daniel considered, then handed her a cutting board and vegetables. "Salad duty?" "I can handle that." They worked together while Sophie set the table with great concentration, making sure each fork and knife was perfectly aligned. She kept up her usual stream of conversation, telling Emily about school, about her friend Maya, who had a pet hamster, about the fact that she'd decided she wanted to be a paleontologist when she grew up. "That's a great goal," Emily said, chopping tomatoes. "Daddy says I can be anything I want if I work hard enough." "He's right." Sophie paused, looked at Emily seriously. "What did you want to be when you were my age?" "An artist. I wanted to draw and paint all day." "And now you do?" "Sometimes. Not as much as I'd like." "Why not?" It was such a simple question, such a kid question. Why not just do the thing you want to do? Emily glanced at Daniel, who was very carefully not looking at her, focusing intently on stirring the sauce. "Because sometimes life gets complicated," Emily said carefully, "and you have to do other things to pay bills and take care of yourself, but I'm working on getting back to art more." Sophie nodded like this made perfect sense. "Daddy says the same thing. He used to build things, but now he mostly has meetings." Daniel finally looked up. "I still build things sometimes." "Like Emily's cabinet," Sophie said. You built that." "Fixed it, yeah. Same thing." Sophie finished setting the table, stood back to admire her work. "Done. Can we eat now?" Dinner was chaotic in the best way. Sophie told elaborate stories about her imaginary adventures with Rex the dinosaur. Daniel asked Emily about her design project, and Emily found herself laughing more than she had in months. After they ate, Sophie wanted to show Emily her room. It was exactly what Emily expected. Walls painted soft purple, glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling, toys and books everywhere. But what caught her attention was the art corner. A small desk covered with crayons, markers, construction paper, half-finished drawings. "I like to make stuff too," Sophie said. "Like you." "Can I see?" Sophie showed her everything. Drawings of dinosaurs and princesses and her family, stick figures labeled "Me" and "Daddy" in careful, wobbly handwriting. One picture had 3 figures, Sophie, Daniel, and a woman with long hair. "Mommy," Sophie explained simply. "I don't remember her much, but Daddy has pictures." Emily's throat tightened. "She's beautiful in your drawing. Daddy says she was beautiful in real life too, and really smart, and she would have loved me." Sophie said it matter-of-factly, without sadness, just stating facts she'd been told and accepted. "I'm sure she would have. You're pretty lovable." Sophie grinned. "That's what Daddy says too." They drew together for a while, Sophie insisting on teaching Emily how to draw a proper stegosaurus. When they emerged from the bedroom, Daniel was cleaning up the kitchen. "You didn't have to do that," Emily said. "I made the mess. Besides, you cooked last week." "Fair's fair." He dried his hands on a dish towel, glanced at Sophie. "Did you show Emily your entire dinosaur collection?" "Not all of it, just the important ones." "There are unimportant dinosaurs?" Sophie gave him a look that suggested this was a ridiculous question. "Obviously." Around 8, Sophie started getting sleepy again. This time Daniel didn't have to tell her it was bedtime. She climbed onto the couch next to Emily, leaned against her side, and yawned. "Time for bed, kiddo," Daniel said gently. "Can Emily read me a story?" Emily looked at Daniel, uncertain. This felt like crossing another line. Bedtime routines were intimate, personal, family territory. But Daniel just said, "If she doesn't mind." "I don't mind," Emily heard herself say. Sophie's room had a bookshelf full of picture books. She selected one about a dinosaur who was afraid of the dark, climbed into bed, and waited expectantly. Emily sat on the edge of the bed and read, doing different voices for each character. Sophie giggled, fighting sleep, determined to hear the whole story. By the end, her eyes were drooping. "Good night, Sophie," Emily said softly. "Good night, Emily." Sophie's voice was sleepy, content. "I'm really glad you're our friend." Something in Emily's chest cracked open. "I'm glad too." She turned off the light, left the door cracked open the way Sophie requested, and found Daniel waiting in the hallway. "Thank you," he said quietly. "She doesn't usually warm up to people that fast."
She's easy to warm up to. They moved back to the living room, sat on the couch with careful space between them. The apartment was quiet now, just the distant sounds of the city outside and the hum of the refrigerator.
This is nice, Emily said. Your place. It's home. Sophie picked most of the decorations. Daniel gestured to the artwork on the walls, a mix of professional pieces and Sophie's crayon creations, framed with equal importance. I like that you frame her art. Why wouldn't I? It's important to her, which makes it important to me. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Daniel said, Can I ask you something? Sure. What are we doing here? Emily's heart kicked up. What do you mean? I mean, Daniel turned to face her more fully. We're not just landlord and tenant anymore. We're not just acquaintances. But I don't know what we are, and I think we should probably talk about it. Emily had been avoiding this conversation, avoiding putting words to whatever was developing between them, because naming it made it real, and real things could hurt you. I don't know what we are either, she admitted, but you feel it too. This, Daniel gestured between them, whatever this is. Yeah, I feel it. Okay, good. I wasn't sure if I was imagining things. You're not imagining things. Daniel ran a hand through his hair, a gesture Emily was starting to recognize as something he did when he was uncertain. I haven't done this in a long time. The dating thing, the getting to know someone thing. Caroline was my high school sweetheart. I've never really had to navigate this as an adult. I'm not exactly an expert either. What do you want? Daniel asked. From this. From us. Emily took a breath, tried to be honest. I don't know. I like spending time with you. I like Sophie. I like that you fixed my cabinet and introduced me to Lisa, and that you actually seem to care about whether I'm okay. She paused. But I'm also scared. Of what? Of getting hurt. Of this not working. Of realizing that we're too different and this was all just a nice idea that couldn't survive reality. Daniel nodded slowly. Those are fair fears. What do you want? Emily asked. Honestly, I want to keep doing this. Having dinner, talking, getting to know you better. I want to see where this goes. He met her eyes. But I need to be careful, for Sophie's sake. She's already attached to you, and if this doesn't work out, that's going to hurt her. I know. So maybe we take it slow. No rush, just see what happens. Emily felt relief wash through her. Slow she could do. Slow felt manageable. Slow sounds good. Yeah? Yeah. Daniel smiled. Actually smiled, full and genuine. Okay then. They sat there looking at each other, and Emily felt something shift. They were choosing this, actively deciding to try, despite the complications and the differences and the fear. It felt terrifying and exactly right. I should probably go, Emily said eventually. It's getting late. Let me drive you home. You don't have to. I can take the bus. Emily, I'm not letting you take the bus at 9:30 at night. I'll drive you. She wanted to argue, wanted to maintain her independence, but she was tired of always doing everything alone. Okay, thank you. Daniel grabbed his keys, checked on Sophie one more time, still sleeping soundly, and they headed down to his car. It was nice, of course. Expensive, but not ostentatious. Practical. The drive back to Emily's apartment was quiet, comfortable. Daniel pulled up in front of her building, put the car in park. Thanks for dinner, Emily said, and for letting me be part of Sophie's bedtime routine. Thanks for coming, for being patient with us. Emily reached for the door handle, hesitated. Daniel? Yeah? I'm really glad we're doing this, whatever this is. His smile was soft in the dim light from the street lamp. Me too. She got out of the car, watched him drive away, and stood on the sidewalk for a moment before heading inside. Her apartment felt emptier than usual, quieter, but also full of possibility. Emily got ready for bed, checked her phone one last time before sleep. A text from Daniel. Home safe, Sophie's still asleep. Thank you for tonight. Emily typed back. Thank you for having me. Tell Sophie I said goodnight. Will do. Sleep well, Emily. You too. She set the phone down, turned off the light, and lay in the dark thinking about brown eyes and careful smiles and a little girl who'd decided Emily was her friend. This was happening. Slow, careful, terrifying, but happening. and Emily realized she didn't want to stop it. The following Tuesday, Emily's phone rang during her lunch break at the diner. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Hello? Emily Carter? A woman's voice, professional and warm. Yes? This is Margaret Reeves from the Westfield Gallery downtown. Lisa Chen passed along your portfolio, and I'd like to discuss a potential opportunity with you. Do you have a moment? Emily nearly dropped her phone. The Westfield Gallery was one of the most respected art spaces in the city. She'd walked past it dozens of times, admired the work in the windows, never imagined her own art could end up there. Yes, I have a moment. Wonderful. We're curating a group show for emerging local artists in December. Your work caught my attention, particularly your use of color and urban themes. I'd like to include 3 of your pieces if you're interested. Emily's heart was hammering. You want to show my work? I do. Obviously, there are details to discuss. We take a commission on any sales, you'd need to provide proper framing, that sort of thing. But yes, I think your pieces would fit beautifully with what we're trying to accomplish. They talked for 10 more minutes. Margaret explained the show's concept, the timeline, what would be expected. Emily tried to sound professional and coherent while her brain was screaming that this couldn't be real. When she hung up, she just sat there in the diner's back room, staring at nothing. Her coworker Maria poked her head in. You okay? You look like you saw a ghost. I think I just got into an art show. What? That's amazing. Congratulations. Emily nodded, still processing. Then she pulled up Daniel's number, hesitated. They'd agreed to take things slow. She didn't want to seem clingy or overeager or like she needed him to validate every good thing that happened. But he'd been the one to connect her with Lisa. He was part of this chain of events. She texted, "Remember how you introduced me to Lisa? Well, she passed my portfolio to a gallery owner, and I just got asked to be in a group show in December." The response came back fast. "That's incredible. Congratulations. When can I see you to celebrate properly?" Emily smiled at her phone. "I work until 8 tonight. I'll pick you up. We're going out." "You don't have to do that. I want to. Let me do this. Please." She thought about saying no, thought about protecting her independence, maintaining boundaries, but she was tired of always saying no to good things. "Okay. See you at 8. Daniel was waiting outside the diner when her shift ended, leaning against his car like he had all the time in the world. He smiled when he saw her, and Emily felt that now familiar flip in her chest. "Congratulations," he said. "This is huge." "I still can't quite believe it's real." "It's real. You earned it." He opened the car door for her. "Where do you want to go?" "Your choice. Anywhere." Emily thought about fancy restaurants, the kind of places Daniel probably frequented, places where she'd feel out of place and self-conscious. "There's a Thai place near my apartment," she said. "Nothing fancy, but the food's good." Perfect. The restaurant was small and crowded with mismatched chairs and laminate tables. Daniel didn't seem to care. He ordered pad thai and listened while Emily talked about her conversation with Margaret, asking questions that showed he actually understood what this meant. "3 pieces," he said. "Which ones are you thinking?" "The blue and gold canvas you saw. Maybe the watercolor series of buildings, and I might create something new specifically for the show." "What would you create?" Emily played with her chopsticks, thinking. "I don't know yet. Something about the city, about contrast. The way different worlds exist right next to each other, and sometimes they touch, and sometimes they don't." Daniel was quiet for a moment. Then, "That sounds personal." "Most good art is." "Fair point." He took a drink of his Thai iced tea. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Why design instead of fine art? You clearly love painting." Emily had been asked this before, usually by people who didn't understand that loving something didn't mean you could survive on it. Design pays, or it's supposed to when you can get work. Fine art is a gamble. You might sell pieces, you might not. I needed something more reliable. And now? Now I'm doing both. The design work with Lisa is covering bills. The gallery show is for me. That's smart, practical. I've had to be practical for a long time. Daniel nodded, something shifting in his expression. "I forget sometimes that we've had very different experiences. I've never really had to worry about money. Not since the company took off anyway.
Before that, yeah, there were some lean years, but not like what you've been through. It's not a competition. I know, but I want to understand. Want to know what your life has actually been like. Emily studied him. He looked genuine. Not like he was asking out of pity or curiosity, but real interest. It's been hard, she said simply. Working multiple jobs, never quite having enough. Always one emergency away from falling apart. The bathroom flood? That could have destroyed me financially if you hadn't covered the repairs. That's what it's like. Living on the edge all the time. I'm sorry. You didn't cause it.
No. But I benefited from a system that makes it harder for people like you and easier for people like me. That's worth acknowledging. They sat with that for a moment. The restaurant buzzed around them, other conversations flowing past. Finally, Emily said, "You're different than I expected." "Yeah? What did you expect?" "Honestly? Someone more entitled, more out of touch." She smiled slightly. "You've surprised me." "Good. I think." Daniel returned the smile. "You've surprised me too." "How?" "You're stronger than you think you are, more talented, more willing to take chances despite being scared." He paused. "And you're really good with Sophie. She talks about you constantly." Emily felt warmth spread through her chest. She's easy to care about. She is, but not everyone sees that. My brother's girlfriend is nice enough, but she doesn't really engage with Sophie, treats her like an accessory. Daniel's jaw tightened. "You actually listen to her, talk to her like she's a person." "She is a person." "Exactly." He reached across the table, hesitated, then took Emily's hand. His palm was warm, slightly calloused. "Thank you for that, for seeing her." Emily looked down at their joined hands. This was new. They'd been careful about physical contact, keeping things friendly but distant. This felt like a shift. She didn't pull away. "You're welcome," she said softly. They finished dinner, Daniel insisting on paying despite Emily's protests. On the drive back to her apartment, he asked about the design project, about her shifts at the diner, about whether she was sleeping enough. "You sound like my mother," Emily teased. "Sorry, occupational hazard of being a parent. I worry about people." "I'm fine, tired, but fine." Daniel pulled up in front of her building, put the car in park, didn't immediately unlock the doors. "I want to ask you something," he said, "and you can absolutely say no." Emily's pulse quickened. "Okay, this weekend is Sophie's fall festival at school. There's going to be games, food, probably terrible cafeteria pizza. She asked if you could come." He glanced at Emily. "I know that's a big ask. It's a parent-kid event, and we're not." "What are we?" Emily asked. The question hung between them. Daniel took a breath. "I'd like to say we're dating, if that's okay with you." Emily's heart was doing complicated things. They'd agreed to go slow. This felt fast, but also not fast enough somehow. "Dating," she repeated. "Yeah, exclusively, officially. Whatever you want to call it." Daniel turned to face her more fully. "I like you, Emily. A lot. And I think you like me too. And I'm tired of pretending this is just casual friendship when it's clearly more than that." "What about taking it slow?" "We can still take it slow, just while officially acknowledging that we're taking it somewhere." He paused. "But if I'm reading this wrong, if you just want to be friends, tell me now, and I'll respect that." Emily looked at him, at his dark eyes and uncertain expression, and the way he was holding his breath waiting for her answer. She thought about all the reasons this was a bad idea. The money difference, the complication of Sophie, the risk of getting hurt, and then she thought about dinners and laughter and feeling less alone than she'd felt in years. "You're not reading it wrong," she said. "I like you too. More than I probably should. Why shouldn't you?" "Because you're my landlord and you're rich and you have a kid and this could get really messy really fast." "It could," Daniel agreed, "or it could be really good." "You're annoyingly optimistic. One of us has to be." He smiled. "So what do you say? Want to officially date me and come to a fall festival with terrible pizza?" Emily felt herself smiling back. "Yeah, okay, I do, boo." "Yeah?" "Yeah." Daniel let out a breath that sounded like relief. Then he leaned over, slowly, giving her time to pull back if she wanted. Emily didn't pull back. Their first kiss was soft, tentative. Daniel's hand came up to cup her face, gentle and careful, and Emily felt something in her chest crack open wider. When they pulled apart, Daniel was smiling. "I've been wanting to do that for weeks," he admitted. "Me too." Good to know I wasn't alone in that. They sat there for another moment, grinning at each other like teenagers. Finally, Emily said, "I should go inside." "Probably. Text me about the festival details?" "I will." He kissed her once more, quick and sweet. "Good night, Emily." "Good night." She floated up to her apartment, unlocked the door, and leaned against it once inside. She was dating Daniel Hayes. She had an art show in December. Her life was changing in ways she couldn't have predicted a month ago. And for the first time in years, Emily felt hopeful about the future. The fall festival was exactly as advertised. Crowded, loud, filled with kids running in every direction and parents trying to keep track of them. Emily met Daniel and Sophie at the entrance, and Sophie immediately grabbed her hand. "You came! Daddy said you might be busy, but you came." "I wouldn't miss it," Emily said, and meant it. They spent the afternoon moving from booth to booth. Sophie won a goldfish at the ring toss, named it Sparkles on the spot, and declared it her new best friend. Daniel helped her with the beanbag toss, and Emily took photos on her phone. Sophie's determined face, Daniel laughing when he missed completely, the two of them celebrating when Sophie landed 3 bags in a row. They ran into some of Daniel's friends, other parents from Sophie's class. Emily was introduced as Daniel's girlfriend, which made her stomach flip every time. People were nice, welcoming. A few seemed surprised, but nobody was rude. One woman, Jessica, pulled Emily aside while Daniel was helping Sophie at the face painting booth. "I just wanted to say it's really nice to see Daniel happy again," Jessica said. "He's been alone for so long." "Well, not alone. He has Sophie. But you know what I mean." Emily nodded. "I do. Sophie clearly adores you. That's rare. She's usually shy around new people." "She's a special kid." "She is." Jessica smiled. "Anyway, I'm glad you're here. He deserves something good." After Jessica walked away, Emily watched Daniel across the crowded cafeteria. He was crouched next to Sophie, helping her choose between a butterfly and a rainbow for her face paint. Patient, attentive, completely focused on his daughter. He caught Emily looking and smiled. She smiled back. Later, after the festival ended and Sophie was sufficiently exhausted, they went back to Daniel's apartment. Sophie crashed on the couch almost immediately, still clutching the bag with Sparkles the goldfish. "I should set up the tank," Daniel said, looking at the sleeping child. "But I also don't want to wake her." "I can help set it up quietly," Emily offered. They worked together in the kitchen, assembling the small fish tank, filling it with water, adding the gravel and plastic plants Sophie had chosen. Sparkles swam in circles, seemingly unbothered by the chaos of his new life. "She's going to want to bring this to school for show and tell," Daniel said. "Probably. And I'm going to have to be the dad who brings a fish to first grade." Emily grinned. "Could be worse. Could be a snake. Don't give her ideas." They finished setting up the tank, placed it on Sophie's dresser in her room. She'd be thrilled when she woke up. Back in the living room, Sophie was still asleep on the couch. Daniel covered her with a blanket, then gestured for Emily to follow him to the kitchen. "Coffee?" he offered. "Sure." While the coffee brewed, Daniel leaned against the counter, watching Emily. "Can I ask you something serious?" Emily's stomach tensed. "Okay. How are you feeling about all of this? Us. The speed we're moving." "Honestly? Always." Emily took a breath. "I'm scared, but also happy, which is confusing because I'm not used to being both at the same time." "That's fair." Daniel poured 2 cups of coffee, handed her one. "I'm scared too. I haven't dated anyone since Caroline. Haven't introduced Sophie to anyone I was interested in. This is all new territory." "What are you most scared of?" "Messing this up, hurting you or Sophie or both of you." He set his coffee down. "What about you?" "Same, but also..." Emily hesitated. "I'm scared of losing myself. I've worked really hard to build a life on my own terms. I don't want to become dependent on you or your money or your connections." "I wouldn't want that either. But it would be easy. You have resources I don't. It would be tempting to just let you solve my problems." Daniel nodded slowly. "So we need boundaries." "Yeah. Tell me what you need." Emily thought about it. "I need to keep paying my own rent, Keep working, even when the design jobs pick up. Make my own decisions about my career. Okay, I can respect that. Daniel paused. But can I still help sometimes? When it's reasonable, not trying to take over, just being supportive? Like what? Like celebrating when good things happen, or being there when bad things happen, or helping you move furniture if you need it because I have a truck and muscles. Emily smiled despite herself. You're very proud of those muscles. Sophie says I look like a tree. I'm taking it as a compliment. It probably was. Trees are strong. Exactly. Daniel's expression grew more serious. I'm not trying to rescue you, Emily. I know you don't need rescuing, but I want to be your partner, someone you can lean on when things get hard. As long as it goes both ways. It does. Believe me, I need support too. Raising a kid alone is... He trailed off. It's lonely. Having you here helps. They stood in the quiet kitchen, drinking coffee, being honest with each other in ways that felt both terrifying and necessary. Finally, Emily said, I think we can make this work. If we keep talking, keep being honest. I think so too. Sophie stirred on the couch, making a small sound. Both Emily and Daniel turned to look, but she didn't wake up. I should probably go, Emily said quietly. Let you get her to bed properly. You could stay, if you want. Daniel said it carefully. On the couch, I mean. Or the guest room. I'm not suggesting... I know. Emily touched his arm. But I have an early shift tomorrow, and I need to go home anyway. Okay. He walked her to the door. Thank you for today, for coming to the festival, for being patient with us. Thank you for inviting me, for being honest about what you need. Daniel kissed her, soft and lingering. Text me when you get home. I will. The next few weeks fell into a rhythm. Emily worked her shifts at the diner, made progress on the design project, started creating new pieces for the gallery show. Daniel texted her every day, sometimes just to say good morning, sometimes to share a funny thing Sophie had said, sometimes to ask if she wanted to grab lunch. They saw each other 2 or 3 times a week, sometimes at his place with Sophie, sometimes just the two of them for dinner or coffee. They talked about everything. Her childhood in a small town upstate, his complicated relationship with his brother, their fears about the future, their hopes for what they were building together. It felt natural. Right. Emily started keeping a toothbrush at Daniel's apartment. Sophie started asking when Emily was coming over next before she'd even left. Small things that added up to something bigger. 3 weeks before the gallery show, Emily was working on a new painting in her apartment when her phone rang. Her mother. Hi, Mom. Emily, I haven't heard from you in weeks. How are you? Guilt washed over Emily. She'd been so caught up in her own life that she'd forgotten to call home. I'm good. Really good, actually. I have news. She told her mother about the gallery show, about the design work with Lisa, about how things were finally starting to turn around professionally. Her mother listened, asked questions, sounded genuinely proud. That's wonderful, sweetheart. I'm so happy for you. Thanks, Mom. And how's your personal life? Are you seeing anyone? Emily hesitated. She hadn't told her parents about Daniel yet, hadn't known how to explain it. The landlord thing, the money difference, the kid. It all sounded complicated. Actually, yeah, I am. Oh, tell me about him. His name is Daniel. Emily chose her words carefully. He's a good person, kind, thoughtful. He has a 6-year-old daughter named Sophie. He's a single father? Widower. His wife passed away 4 years ago. Her mother made a sympathetic sound. That's hard. How are you with the daughter? She's great, smart, curious, really sweet. We get along well. That's important. If you're serious about him, the daughter comes as part of the package. I know, Mom, and I'm okay with that. They talked for a few more minutes before Emily's mother had to go. After hanging up, Emily sat with her phone in her hand, thinking. She was serious about Daniel. That's what scared her. This wasn't casual anymore. Wasn't just dating to see what happened. She was falling for him, for both of them. And that meant the stakes were higher than they'd ever been. Her phone buzzed, a text from Daniel. Sophie wants to know if you can come to her school play next Friday. She's a tree in the forest scene. Emily smiled. Of course I'll come. Wouldn't miss Sophie's theatrical debut. She'll be thrilled. Also, I miss you. Haven't seen you in 3 days. I miss you too. Dinner tomorrow? Just us? I'd like that. Pick you up at 7? Perfect. Emily set the phone down and went back to her painting. But she couldn't stop smiling. This was real. This was happening. And despite all her fears, she didn't want to stop it. Dinner the next night was at a small Italian place Daniel knew, tucked away in a neighborhood Emily had never explored. The kind of restaurant where the owner greeted Daniel by name and led them to a corner table with candles and fresh flowers. "You're a regular here," Emily observed. "I used to come here with Caroline. After she passed, I stopped for a while. But then I started bringing Sophie, and it became our place." Daniel looked around. "I haven't brought anyone else here, just family." Emily understood what he was saying. This mattered. She mattered. "Thank you for bringing me," she said quietly. "Thank you for being here." They ordered food, shared a bottle of wine, talked about everything and nothing. Emily told him about her mother's call, about how strange it felt to tell her parents she was happy when she'd spent so long insisting she was fine on her own. "There's a difference between fine and happy," Daniel said. "Yeah, I'm realizing that. Are you?" "Happy, I mean." Emily met his eyes. "Yeah, I am. Are you?" "The happiest I've been in 4 years." He reached across the table, took her hand. "You've changed things for me, Emily. Made me remember what it feels like to connect with someone, to want something beyond just surviving and taking care of Sophie. You make it sound like I did something extraordinary." "You did. You let me in. That's not easy for you." He was right. It wasn't easy. Emily had spent so long protecting herself, building walls, keeping people at arm's length. But with Daniel, the walls kept coming down. "I'm trying," she said, "to be more open, to trust this." "I know. And I'm trying too." Daniel squeezed her hand. "We're both trying. That's what matters." After dinner, Daniel drove her home. But instead of just dropping her off, he parked and walked her to her door. "Can I come in?" he asked. Emily's heart kicked up. Yeah, of course. Inside, her apartment felt smaller with him in it, more intimate. They'd been here before, but always with Sophie or with the pretense of maintenance work. This was different. Daniel closed the door behind him, turned to face her. "I've been thinking about something." "What?" "About how much I want to kiss you right now." Emily felt heat spread through her. "What's stopping you?" "Nothing, I guess." He crossed the space between them, cupped her face in his hands, and kissed her, deeper than before, more urgent. Emily kissed him back, her hands finding his shoulders, then his hair. He pressed her gently against the door, his body warm and solid against hers. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Daniel rested his forehead against hers. "I should probably go," he said, not moving. "Probably?" "Sophie's with my brother tonight, but I need to pick her up early tomorrow." "Okay." Neither of them moved. "Emily?" "Yeah?" "I'm falling for you, just so you know." Her breath caught. "Yeah?" "Yeah." He pulled back enough to look at her. "I know it soon. I know we said slow, but I needed you to know." Emily felt tears prick her eyes. Happy tears. Overwhelmed tears. "I'm falling for you too," she whispered. Daniel kissed her again, soft and sweet this time. Then he stepped back, ran a hand through his hair. "I really do need to go." "I know, but I'll see you Friday for Sophie's play." "I'll be there." He kissed her once more at the door, then left. Emily locked up behind him, leaned against the door, and let herself feel everything she'd been holding back. She was in love with Daniel Hayes. It was terrifying and wonderful and completely real. And for the first time in her life, Emily believed that something this good might actually last. Sophie's school play was exactly what Emily expected. Adorable chaos. 20 first graders dressed as various forest creatures, half of them forgetting their lines, the other half shouting them too loud. Sophie stood near the back as tree number 4, arms raised above her head, completely still except for occasional swaying when she remembered she was supposed to move with the wind. Emily sat next to Daniel in the cramped auditorium, their shoulders touching, and watched him watch his daughter. The pride on his face was so pure it made her chest ache. When the play ended, the forest saved from some vague danger by the power of friendship, the parents erupted in applause. Sophie spotted them immediately, waved so enthusiastically she nearly knocked over tree number 3. Backstage afterward, Sophie crashed into Daniel's legs with the full force of a 6-year-old who'd just performed on stage. "Did you see me? I didn't move at all." "Well, except when I was supposed to. Did I do good?" "You were perfect," Daniel said, scooping her up. "Emily, did you see me?" "I did. Best tree I've ever seen," Sophie beamed. "Can we get ice cream to celebrate?" Daniel looked at Emily. "What do you think? Ice cream?" "I think tree number 4 earned ice cream." They ended up at a small shop a few blocks from the school. Sophie's still in her tree costume because she refused to take it off. She ordered chocolate with sprinkles and talked nonstop about the play, about how nervous she'd been, about how her friend Maya had forgotten her line, but nobody noticed because everyone was laughing anyway. Emily listened, asked questions, and felt something settle in her chest. This was her life now. School plays and ice cream runs and a little girl who wanted to share every detail of her day. It should have felt overwhelming. Instead, it felt right. Later that night, after they dropped Sophie at home and she'd finally agreed to change out of her costume, Daniel walked Emily to her car. "Thank you for coming," he said. "It meant a lot to Sophie, to me too." "I wanted to be there." "I know. That's what makes it matter." He leaned against her car. "Can I ask you something?" "Always." "The gallery show is in 2 weeks. Are you nervous?" Emily had been trying not to think about it too much, trying to focus on the work instead of the terror of having people actually look at it and judge it. Terrified, actually. Why? Because what if nobody likes it? What if the pieces don't sell? What if I've been fooling myself about being any good? Daniel was quiet for a moment. Then, what if people love it? What if the pieces do sell? What if you've been underestimating yourself this whole time? That's annoyingly optimistic again. Somebody has to balance out your pessimism. He smiled. Seriously, though, you're talented. The work is good. Trust that. I'm trying. I know. He pulled her closer, wrapped his arms around her. Emily rested her head against his chest, listened to his heartbeat. Steady, reliable. "I want you there," she said quietly. "At the show. You and Sophie, if that's okay. We wouldn't miss it. Even though it's on a school night? Even though. This is important. We'll make it work." Emily pulled back enough to look at him. "How did I get this lucky?" "I ask myself the same question every day." Daniel kissed her forehead. "Get some sleep. You have a masterpiece to finish." "It's not a masterpiece. Not yet. But it will be." The 2 weeks before the gallery show passed in a blur of work and nerves and late nights in her apartment with paint-stained hands. Emily finished the 3rd piece, a large canvas depicting the city at dusk, buildings lit from within, shadows and light existing side by side. It was the most personal thing she'd created, the most honest. Lisa came by to see it 3 days before the show, took one look, and whistled low. "Margaret's going to lose her mind over this. It's exactly what the show needs." "You think so?" "I know so. You've got something here, Emily. Real perspective, real voice." Lisa studied the painting. "You're telling a story about existing in spaces that weren't designed for you. About finding light anyway. That resonates." After Lisa left, Emily stood in front of the canvas and let herself believe it, just for a moment, that maybe she'd made something worth seeing. Daniel came over that night with takeout and moral support. Sophie had a sleepover at Maya's house, so it was just the two of them. "It's done," Emily said, gesturing to the painting. Daniel set down the food and walked over to look at it properly. He stood there for a long time, not saying anything, just looking. Emily's anxiety ramped up with every second of silence. "You hate it." "I don't hate it. I'm trying to find the right words." He turned to her. "It's beautiful, and sad, and hopeful all at once. How did you do that?" "I just painted what I felt." "What do you feel?" Emily looked at the canvas, at the contrast between light and dark, between the spaces people inhabited and the spaces between them. "Like I've spent a long time on the outside looking in, but maybe I'm starting to find my way inside." Daniel crossed to her, pulled her into his arms. "You're not on the outside anymore. You know that, right?" "I'm starting to." They ate dinner sitting on her floor, backs against the couch, talking about nothing important. When Daniel's phone buzzed with a text from his brother confirming Sophie's pickup time tomorrow, Emily felt a small pang of disappointment that the night had to end. "Stay," she said, before she could overthink it. Daniel looked at her. "Stay? Yeah, if you want. Nothing has to happen. I don't want you to leave yet." "Okay." He said it simply, no questions, no pressure. "I'll stay." They moved to her bedroom later, both nervous in different ways. Daniel borrowed a t-shirt, Emily changed into pajamas, and they climbed into her small bed like it was the most natural thing in the world. "This bed is tiny," Daniel observed. "I'm aware." "I'm not complaining, just noting." Emily turned to face him in the darkness. She could just make out his features in the light from the street lamp outside. "Thank you for staying. Thank you for asking me to." He brushed hair back from her face. "I'm happy here. With you. In your tiny bed, in your small apartment, just so you know." "Even though you have a penthouse?" "Especially because I have a penthouse. This feels more real." They fell asleep tangled together, and Emily dreamed about light and shadows and finding home in unexpected places. The morning of the gallery show, Emily woke up with her stomach in knots. Daniel had left early to get Sophie ready for school, but he'd left a note on her kitchen counter. "You've got this. See you tonight. D." She spent the day alternating between confidence and terror. The pieces had been delivered to the gallery yesterday, professionally framed and ready. Margaret had texted that everything looked perfect. Lisa had sent an encouraging message. Her mother had called to say she was proud. Everything should have felt fine. Emily still felt like she might throw up. By the time she arrived at the gallery that evening, there were already people inside. Not a huge crowd, but enough to make her hands shake. Margaret spotted her immediately and came over. "There you are. Your pieces are getting a lot of attention. Come see." Emily followed her through the gallery, past other artists' work, all good, all impressive, to the back corner where her 3 paintings hung. There were people standing in front of them, actually looking, actually discussing. "The use of color is striking," one woman was saying to her companion. "I love the urban theme, feels authentic." Emily couldn't breathe properly. Margaret touched her arm. "Breathe, they love it. 2 of them already have red dots." "Red dots. Sold." "What? Already?" "The watercolor series and the blue-gold canvas. Both sold in the first 30 minutes. Margaret smiled. "I told you that you were good." Emily felt tears prick her eyes. She blinked them back. "Thank you for taking a chance on me." "Thank Lisa. She's the one who brought you to my attention, but you're the one who did the work." Margaret gestured to the paintings. "This is all you." Daniel and Sophie arrived 20 minutes later. Sophie was wearing her favorite purple dress and carrying Rex the dinosaur because she'd insisted he needed to see Emily's art. "We're here," Sophie announced, loud enough that several people turned to look. Emily crouched down to her level. "Hi, thanks for coming. Daddy says your paintings are in a real gallery, and people are buying them, and you're famous now." "I'm not famous." "You're a little famous," Daniel corrected, coming to stand next to them. He looked proud. So proud it made Emily's chest tight. 2 pieces sold already. That's incredible." "Margaret told you?" "She might have mentioned it." He pulled Emily into a hug. "Congratulations. You deserve this." They walked through the gallery together, Sophie asking questions about every painting. Why that one was blue, why that one had squares, what the artist was trying to say. Daniel let her ask, let Emily answer, didn't rush them. When they got to Emily's pieces, Sophie studied them with the same serious concentration she'd given Emily's apartment artwork weeks ago. "I like this one the best," she said, pointing to the cityscape. "It looks like nighttime, but it's not scary. It's pretty." "That's exactly what I was going for," Emily said. "Can we buy it?" Daniel laughed. "Someone already did, kiddo." Sophie's face fell. "But I wanted it for our house. How about Emily makes us something else? Would that be okay?" He was looking at Emily when he said it. Our house. Us. Making it clear that Emily was part of that equation. "I could do that," Emily managed. "Really?" Sophie brightened immediately. "Can you make one with dinosaurs?" "Sophie," Daniel said gently, "let's not push our luck." "It's okay," Emily smiled. "I can probably work some dinosaurs in." The evening continued. More people arrived. Emily talked to strangers about her work, about her process, tried to sound professional and coherent. Daniel stayed close, offering support without hovering, letting her have this moment while making sure she knew he was there. Around 8, Margaret announced that all 3 of Emily's pieces had sold. Emily had to sit down. "This is good, right?" she asked Daniel, slightly dazed.
This is very good. He squeezed her hand. You did it. You're a real artist now. I was always a real artist. You're right, you were. But now other people know it too. After the show ended, Margaret pulled Emily aside. I want to talk to you about a solo show. Next spring, if you're interested. Just your work. We'll need probably 15 to 20 pieces, but I think you can do it. What do you say? Emily's brain short-circuited. A solo show?
You've got the talent, and clearly there's a market for your work. Think about it. Let me know. I don't have to think about it. Yes. Absolutely yes. Margaret grinned. Excellent. I'll be in touch about details. After she walked away, Emily just stood there trying to process. A solo show. Her work, filling an entire gallery. This was real. This was actually happening. Daniel came up behind her, wrapped his arms around her waist. I'm so proud of you. Emily leaned back against him. I can't believe this is my life now. Believe it. You earned it. Sophie appeared, tugging on Emily's sleeve. Can we go celebrate now? Daddy said we could get dessert. Dessert sounds perfect. They ended up at an ice cream shop, Sophie's choice, where Sophie ordered the biggest sundae they had and declared the whole evening a success. Emily sat across from Daniel in the bright fluorescent lighting, eating mediocre ice cream and feeling happier than she could remember being in years. What are you thinking about? Daniel asked. How much has changed since that Tuesday morning when my bathroom flooded? That was a good flood. Was it? Well, the flood itself was terrible, but everything after? He reached across the table, took her hand. Yeah, that was good. Sophie looked up from her sundae, chocolate on her chin. What flood? The one that brought Emily into our lives, Daniel said. Oh, that was a very good flood then. Sophie went back to her ice cream, completely satisfied with that explanation. Emily laughed. I guess it was. Later, after Sophie had fallen asleep in the car on the way home, Daniel carried her upstairs while Emily followed. They tucked her into bed, Rex positioned carefully next to her pillow, and stood in the doorway watching her sleep. She's gotten so attached to you, Daniel said quietly. Is that a problem? No, but it means I need to ask you something. He turned to face Emily fully. Where do you see this going? Us, I mean. Emily's heart kicked up. I don't know. Where do you see it going? Honestly, I see you in our lives permanently. I see Sophie calling you something other than Emily eventually. I see us building something real together. He paused. But that's a lot. And I don't want to pressure you, so I need to know what you want. Emily looked at him. At this man who'd burst into her bathroom and somehow ended up changing everything. Who'd fixed her cabinet and introduced her to Lisa and believed in her when she'd stopped believing in herself. Who had a daughter who made her laugh and a heart big enough to risk getting hurt again. I want that too, she said. All of it. It scares me, but I want it. Daniel let out a breath. Yeah? Yeah, I'm not going anywhere. Good. Because I'm not letting you go. He pulled her close, kissed her properly. I love you, Emily Carter. The words hung in the air between them. You, important. I love you too, Emily whispered. Both of you. They stood there in the hallway outside Sophie's room, holding each other, and Emily felt something click into place. This was home. Not the apartment or the building or even the city. This, Daniel and Sophie, and the life they were building together. She'd spent so long thinking she had to do everything alone, had to be strong enough, independent enough, self-sufficient enough. But standing here, wrapped in Daniel's arms, she realized that letting people in wasn't weakness. It was the bravest thing she'd ever done. The weeks that followed were full of small moments that added up to a life. Emily kept her apartment but spent more nights at Daniel's place than her own. She kept her shifts at the diner, but fewer of them, making room for more design work with Lisa. She started creating pieces for the solo show, filling Daniel's apartment with canvases in various states of completion. Sophie started calling Emily M instead of Emily, which felt like progress. She'd climb into Emily's lap during movie nights, ask her opinion on important 6-year-old matters like which backpack was cooler or whether chocolate or vanilla was objectively better. Daniel integrated Emily into every part of his life, introduced her to his brother, awkward but not terrible, brought her to business dinners where she felt out of place, but he never made her feel that way, asked her opinion on decisions about Sophie, about work, about what color to paint the kitchen. It wasn't always perfect. They had their first fight in November over something stupid. Emily feeling like Daniel was trying to pay for too many things, Daniel frustrated that she wouldn't accept help even when she needed it. They both said things that hurt, then apologized, then talked it through like adults. "I can't let you pay for everything," Emily had said. "I need to contribute. I need to feel like an equal partner." "You are an equal partner. Money doesn't determine that." "Maybe not for you, but I grew up watching my parents struggle. I swore I'd never be dependent on anyone." Daniel had taken her hands, looked at her seriously. "Being in a partnership isn't the same as being dependent. It means we help each other. Some months you help more, some months I help more. But we're in this together. That's what matters." They'd figured it out, established boundaries that felt fair to both of them. Emily paid her own rent, her own bills, contributed to groceries when she was staying over. Daniel covered bigger expenses when they came up, and Emily learned to accept it without feeling like she owed him. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. By December, Emily's life looked completely different than it had 3 months ago. She'd reduced her diner shifts to part-time, picked up steady design work through Lisa's agency, sold 2 more paintings through Margaret's gallery connections. Her bank account wasn't impressive, but it was stable. Growing, even. She wasn't rich. Probably never would be. But she wasn't drowning anymore either. And she had Daniel, had Sophie, had a found family that felt more solid than anything she'd built on her own. 3 days before Christmas, Daniel asked her to move in. They were in his kitchen, Emily making cookies with Sophie while Daniel pretended to help, but mostly just stole dough. "Stop eating the raw dough," Emily said, swatting his hand. "You'll get sick." "Worth it." He stole another bite anyway. "Sophie, go check if the ornaments are still on the tree, or if Max knocked them off again." Sophie ran off to inspect the situation with their new cat, adopted 2 weeks ago after Sophie had waged a relentless campaign. Max was currently sleeping under the Christmas tree, completely innocent. Once Sophie was out of earshot, Daniel turned to Emily. "Move in with us." Emily's hands stilled on the cookie dough. "What?" "Move in. Officially. Bring your stuff, give up your apartment, be here permanently." He said it like it was simple, like it wasn't a massive, terrifying, life-changing decision. "Daniel, I know it's big, but you're here almost every night anyway. Sophie thinks of you as family. I want to wake up with you every morning, not just the nights you happen to stay over." He took her flower-covered hands. "I want to build a life with you, for real. What do you say?" Emily's mind raced. This was huge. Giving up her apartment meant giving up her safety net, her independence, the proof that she could survive on her own. But it also meant saying yes to something better, to a real home, to partnership, to love. "What about Sophie?" she asked. "Have you talked to her about this?" "I wanted to ask you first, but yes, I've floated the idea. She asked if that meant you'd be here for breakfast every day. When I said yes, she asked if we could start having pancakes more often." Daniel smiled. "I think she's on board." "And if it doesn't work out, if we what? Fall apart?" Daniel shook his head. "I'm not planning on that happening. Are you?" "No, but people plan for lots of things that don't work out." "Emily." He waited until she looked at him. "I love you. Sophie loves you. We want you here, not as a guest, as family, as home. But if you need more time, I understand. Just think about it." Sophie came running back in. "Max is fine. He's sleeping. Can we decorate the cookies now?" "In a minute, kiddo," Daniel said. Emily looked at him, at this life he was offering, at the kitchen full of flour and half-made cookies and a little girl who wanted her around for breakfast, at the man who'd seen her at her lowest and decided she was worth staying for. She thought about her small apartment, about living alone, being independent, proving she didn't need anyone. And then she thought about this, about family, about partnership, about choosing connection over safety. "Okay," she said. Daniel blinked. Okay, I'll move in." Emily felt herself smiling. But I'm keeping some of my furniture, and I get a say in decorating decisions. Deal. Daniel pulled her into a kiss, not caring about the flower that transferred to his shirt. Sophie made a disgusted sound. Oh, you're kissing again. Get used to it, Daniel told his daughter. Emily's moving in. Sophie's eyes went wide. Really? Forever? Emily crouched down to her level. If that's okay with you. That's super okay. Sophie threw her arms around Emily's neck. Can we paint my room purple? The really purple purple? We'll talk about it, Emily laughed. That night, after Sophie was asleep and the cookies were decorated and put away, Emily and Daniel sat on the couch with hot chocolate and looked at the Christmas tree. I can't believe I'm doing this, Emily said. Having second thoughts? No, just processing. This time last year I was alone in my apartment eating ramen for Christmas dinner. Now I'm here with you and Sophie planning where to put my furniture. Is that good or bad? Good. Definitely good. She leaned against him. Scary, but good. Life's scary. Might as well be scared with people you love. Emily thought about that, about how much courage it took to let people in, to trust that they'd stay, to build something knowing it could fall apart but choosing to build it anyway. I love you, she said. Both of you, just so you know. We love you too. Daniel kissed the top of her head. Welcome home, Emily. Home. The word settled in her chest, warm and certain. She'd spent so long thinking home was a place, 4 walls and a roof, and proof that she could survive on her own. But sitting here, wrapped in Daniel's arms, thinking about Sophie asleep down the hall and the life they were building together, Emily realized home was never about the place. It was about the people, about choosing to stay even when it was hard, about building something together instead of trying to do everything alone. The bathroom flood hadn't been a disaster. It had been the beginning. A broken pipe had led to a fixed cabinet, which led to an introduction, which led to coffee, which led to dinners and art shows and falling in love with a man and his daughter. Sometimes the worst moments opened doors to the best things. Emily had learned to be strong alone. Now she was learning to be strong together. And that, she was discovering, took even more courage. But she was ready for it. Ready for mornings with Sophie and Daniel. Ready for building a career she was proud of. Ready for creating art that mattered. Ready for a life that felt full instead of just survivable. The city lights glowed outside the window, buildings lit from within, shadows and light existing side by side. Emily thought about her painting, about how she'd been trying to capture this feeling, the way different worlds could touch and overlap and create something new. She'd found it now, not in paint, but in real life, and it was better than anything she could have imagined. Hey, Daniel said quietly. What are you thinking about? Emily smiled. Just that I'm really glad your daughter's bedroom flooded. Weird thing to be glad about. Maybe. But it brought me here. To this. To you. She turned to look at him. To home. Daniel pulled her closer. Outside, the first snow of winter started to fall, dusting the city in white. Inside, the Christmas tree lights twinkled, the apartment was warm, and Emily Carter, who'd spent so long on the outside looking in, was finally, completely home. The broken pipe had been just the beginning. Everything that mattered came after, and Emily wouldn't change a single moment of it.